So, welcome everyone to the 65th and on Agile Meetup. Today, I'm really excited that we managed to get Fabrice Bernhard on board because he actually has other obligations this evening. So I'm very grateful that he is sacrificing 45 minutes of his life to give us an insight into the Lean Tech Manifesto, because it is a great book that he co-authored with his co-founder, and it's taking us into the realm of lean, and where lean and agile have actually shared the similar roots, and it, I think, provides us with an opportunity to look ahead into the future where agile might go. Now that we are apparently get a bit of I wouldn't say annoyed, but tired of the concept-based form of agility, Scrum, Kanban, you name it, and are looking more for a way of context-based agility. So what can we actually do based on core principles, on the roots of agility and lean, to help teams get better at what they do, create value for customers, and contribute to the bottom line of their organizations, because as you all know, we don't get paid to practice a certain framework, or we get paid to actually solve our customers' problems. Fabrice, please.
I'm not sacrificing any time. I'm very happy to be here and share with agile practitioners my learnings over the last 12 years. And indeed, I think we're all in this context where we realize that, agile is struggling a bit at scale. And I hope that, our learnings can be useful to you. And maybe, let me check. Okay. So first, very quick introduction. My name is Fabrice Bernhard. I'm French, based in Paris, but very often in London. And so I'm the co-founder of Theodo. Theodo is a tech consultancy that we've grown from about 12 people in 2012 to 700 people in 2023, 4 now. And we've always, since 2012, basically, we are big fans of Scrum and Agile. But we also have, I think, an interesting experience in with the challenges one can have when applying them to scale, whether it's for our large clients or also for ourselves, because we wanted to grow our own company in an agile way. So I think to share that experience, first we need to come back quickly to the roots of agile and understand what it means now to people, to large organizations, and what issues, find the quite structural issues these large organizations will face when trying to be agile. And then share also our experience of studying large tech companies, the kind of large organizations that haven't managed to keep like an agile culture, and what they have in common, and basically the synthesis of all these learnings into what we've called the Lean Tech Manifesto, which we've shared in the book. So quick recap. There was no agile back in the 60s at the really beginning of computer science, because at the time it was just like team of scientists working together and doing amazing things together, and that was good enough. And this is typically the team that worked on the navigation system for the Apollo rockets. So as you can see, they were doing a great job without being very structured. The issue of structuring really appeared in the 80s with the advent of the microchip, and therefore the computers becoming a booming industry, because every company wanted to have their own computers, and for all these computers all of a sudden being acquired, you needed more and more software. So the software industry tried to find a way to scale the production to fit the demand, to match the demand. And that's how we ended up with like things like waterfall and very structured bureaucratic approaches to software, which, as we all know, are not known for putting people on the moon, but rather for some spectacular failures. I've tried to find one per, sorry, I don't have a German example. I'm sure I could find one. So the British example that we talk about in the book, which is the benefits payment cards, which cost the taxpayer about 800 million pounds. I also found a really nice example in France for software for all the like civil servants payments, like salary payments, which really like was stopped after wasting 290 million euros. So this is what these bureaucratic approaches actually became best known for. Spectacular failures, projects that were too long, were always over budget, etc. This is in this context that Agile appeared, when a lot of pioneers and visionaries realized we needed to find a way to have this magic of, I'd say, the 60s and 70s, but in a way that was structured enough to actually scale it throughout teams all over the world. They realized that they all had like different ways of approaching that, but they had a few principles in common. They managed to agree on these principles, and that's what gave the Agile Manifesto. And it's amazing principles. I'm pretty sure that the audience today knows the Agile Manifesto quite well, but it's really interesting when you look at it, just like a side remark, that it's very much a document in reaction to the bureaucratic processes that they were fighting against. The first principles is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And I think that's quite telling of the kind of mindset they were in. And and the result of capturing so well what could be done as a team of software engineers sparked a huge interest for agility. And just to illustrate that, I found this study by Deloitte in 2017 that says that 94% of HR business leaders reported agility as critical to their organization's success. And I think the Agile Manifesto really helped into giving a really clear, concise message of what we were aiming for. And of course, at the same time, you have these amazing tech giants taking over the incumbents of the industry, such as Netflix taking over Blockbuster, or Amazon taking over Walmart. And of course, when the people try to understand what they had that made them so much more powerful than the established incumbents with, quite a good moat around them, one thing that stood out was that they were very agile in the way they delivered innovation, in the way they delivered value to their customers and users. So that's really what happened in the last 20 years. This combination of really making agility a simple, shareable concept, and of course having amazing role models like all the tech giants, showing how amazing it could be if your organization became agile. What is interesting is between this Agile Manifesto and what became the understanding of agile, that there might be some difference, I think, and that indeed is not very well, I think, clarified. My understanding is that the word agility and the Agile Manifesto itself captures two key visions. One is a humanist vision of teams with a lot of autonomy, individuals and interactions over process and tools, or responding to change over following a plan. And then there is the business vision of rapid innovation to outperform competitors, to outperform your market, which is also captured, by the way, in responding to change over following a plan. And also captured in working software over comprehensive documentation. So that's the two key visions that I think every leader in every organization would want to capture. And we're not paid to practice Scrum. We're paid to innovate rapidly in a way that with teams having a lot of autonomy. I guess that's what people want. So the question would be actually, who doesn't want that? So to go back to the Deloitte survey, apparently 6% of HR business leaders don't want autonomy and innovation. But yeah, let's focus on the 94%. So that, yes, most leaders in every organization, you will find one more of that. However, we're far from there yet. So not everyone became Netflix or Amazon. And the actual number of the same survey is that only 6% of these leaders say that they've achieved an organization that is highly agile. And I guess I'm pretty sure that we've all had this issue. At least we've had it at Theodo, because we had experienced the magic of agility. And that even in large organizations, I'll give you like two very large French companies, Sagem, that's been acquired by Safran, so a huge aerospace company, where we were able to deliver in less than 8 weeks a flight data monitoring platform in production, adopted by users, actually plebiscited by its users. Same at BNP Paribas, where we were able to release a serious game in 6 weeks, and the adoption had really beaten the expectations. But in a different context, where you had more dependencies, more compliance constraints, where you were touching more regulatory aspects, all of a sudden, Scrum was not enough. And in a practical example, in that kind of context, we actually spent 3 weeks to release the proof of concept of what could be done, but it took us 18 months to do it in a way that would be compliant. And what is interesting is, because some people said, that sounds like if Société Générale was like a not as good a company. It's not at all case. These 18 months were actually spent doing continuous improvement meetings every week. And the result is that after these 18 months of setting up the right environment and the right structure, a lot of DevOps, we actually achieved to build the kind of environment where we could then release every new product in 2 months. But yes, it took more than just applying Scrum principles there. So we're not the only ones, of course, who face that issue and then looking for answers to that. So some frameworks to scale Agile have appeared, and by far the most popular, apparently adopted by 20,000 corporates around the world, is SAFe. So I've never met someone. I've met actually a few people that could tell me some good things about SAFe, but most Agile practitioners don't, and the none of the authors of the Agile Manifesto endorse SAFe with these amazing quotes like unsafe or shitty Agile for enterprise. And I guess the issue with SAFe is that it goes against some of the principles of the Agile Manifesto. They've done a good job of reducing the book from 800 pages to 400 pages, but it's still a lot of documentation. And yeah, in my experience, I've never seen software engineering teams in SAFe that had the autonomy to contribute to the product value, to contribute to bring their intelligence on creating more value for the customer. And I guess that really breaks it goes against these two visions. One is the software engineers don't feel autonomous, and of course it also reduces a lot the speed of innovation. Usually a SAFe environment will have 3-month cycles, which is sometimes better than the previous cycles of 12 or 18 months, but very far from the kind of things you see in the tech company like Amazon, where they're releasing new stuff in production every few seconds. So one of the questions we had when we at Theodo were thinking about, what do we do? Okay, Scrum is amazing, but what do we do if there's multiple teams? What do we do for our own organizations overall? And I guess one thing we took us a while to realize that, but I think is important to understand, is that the Agile Manifesto has never been designed for a large organization. It's really been designed for a software development team. And that is probably one of the reasons when you're really into this, all the things around the Agile Manifesto, it's very difficult to then, see that it's going to be difficult to stay agile without disconnecting a bit from that manifesto. So just a quick thought experiment. I think it's interesting to understand what I mean by it doesn't apply to a large organization. So the idea is simple. Let's do thought experiments of trying to use each principle in the very large organization to kind of guide the organization. So individual interactions to start with, the idea that things go so much more efficient to just talk to your teammates rather than start following processes, etc. Is very much based on the fact that there are not that many connections in a small team, possible interactions, but that starts to grow very fast because it grows to the square of the number of people. And so as soon as you have, an organization of 100 people, you start having thousands or tens of thousands. In an organization like Amazon, you would have like hundreds of billions of possible connections. And so therefore, as a leader saying, guys, let's just rely on interactions, let's forget about all these processes, it's just not going to be very helpful. Working software. So the idea that delivering small iterations is a great way to tackle the complexity of quality and fast delivery. Again, there's a bit of a scale issue. This is me trying to simplify software, but if we model software as multiple branching, if your software is super simple, it only has one branch, putting it in production and testing it is as simple as testing the two possible paths. Very simplistic, but helpful. But that really grows exponentially. So as soon as you have a software that has like 3 branches, you already have like 8 possible journeys in your software that you're supposed to test, which means that at very large scale, even a simple, like this very, very small increment that will add 1 branch to the whole big thing is going to add, hundreds of new journeys potentially, making it very difficult to spot a defect if you just do that. I've hidden a few bugs in the software. I don't know if you see them, or if you mistake them for your screens not being clean enough. Anyway, the point is, it's so easy when the number of possible journeys is so large to actually see one defect in one path. The third one, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I think that's what we really loved about Scrum when we really started doing Scrum properly at Theodo. It's this idea that when you put the business expert within the software engineering team, not only does it go faster, but you really start building more ingenious solutions. Because like challenging the constraints on both sides helps the team come up with like much better solutions, so innovate much better. But again, how can you scale that? Once you start having large projects that need multiple teams, you can't really put the client in every team. By the way, the client is a real client, that the photo, and the people are real people in the team. Anyway, so you can't put Pascal in every team. And also when on large contexts, the client is not represented by one visionary decision maker. It starts becoming a lot of stakeholders, so you need to actually coordinate them also between themselves. And again, so saying, okay, we just need to put the customer in every team is not going to work by itself. Finally, responding to change, the idea that a small team is the best kind of level to actually understand what is happening in the market, identify the changes and react to them. That's very true. But if you scale it to a large organization and you would imagine, one team able to like initiate a change to the whole organization, that sounds much more like crowd effects with potential catastrophic consequences, which is of course not at all what you want to see happen in your organization. So this sort of experiment of saying, okay, we can't really apply the Agile Manifesto at scale. First, it's not a criticism of the Agile Manifesto. I still think it's an amazing document, and that's captured so well what is needed at the scale of a small team, software development team, by the way. And it doesn't mean that Agile at scale is not possible. What gave us hope at the time when we were looking for a solution was seeing all these amazing, inspiring tech organizations that were growing super fast and innovating super rapidly and also seeming to have like really empowered teams within their organizations. So we could see that some organization managed to like retain an agile culture while being like gigantic. So of course the question was, what do they have in common? And long story short, we've actually identified two really key things. The first one, and I don't know how many of you know that. So if or any one of you who doesn't, I hope it's going to be an amazing discovery. When we looked for shared principles behind some of these organizations, we actually found very concrete stories of how they had been trained and introduced to lean thinking. So that applies to Steve Jobs. So the story of Steve Jobs is that when he gets kind of fired from Apple and launches his next company called Next, he's really fascinated by how do you scale quality. And it's also like when Japanese industry is really starting to boom and getting a lot of garnering a lot of interest from the US. And so one thing he does at the time is actually start being coached by Dr. Juran. So Dr. Juran, sorry, the story is a bit long. I think it's worth it. Dr. Juran is one of the two famous quality management professors that the US sent to Japan after World War II to help on the reconstruction. And so the two professors being Dr. Deming and Dr. Juran. And what is very interesting is they brought their new ideas to Japan that people were apparently not that interested in the US, where things were booming anyway. But in Japan, the audience that they were talking to were mostly company leaders. So the leader of Toyota, the future founders of Sony, so these kind of people. So not only did they bring, so this is what they did, which was very innovative, which was actually applying scientific mindsets to quality management and running a company in general. But they also stayed in Japan for quite a long time. So they were also influenced themselves by the Japanese practices. And so you can see that, by the time Dr. Juran comes back to the US, he's an expert in, what some of the Japanese companies do best, which at the time was not really called lean yet, and shares his learnings with Steve Jobs. And there's this video you can find on YouTube where Steve Jobs explains what he's learned, and it's very profound principles from lean thinking. One of them that I added as a quote is, that Dr. Juran taught him that if you want processes to be improved, the best is to actually trust the people and trust that they're very smart, and that if they're given the opportunity of improving the process, they will do it really well. Another iconic example is Jeff Bezos. So we now have it's shared in the book Working Backwards. So we know that he studied lean thinking around 2000. You can also see that in his letters to shareholders. At some point, he mentions one of his coaching by a Kaizen expert, where he makes the joke that it felt for him very much like being Karate Kid in the movie, because the Kaizen expert was saying, why are you cleaning? It's about problem solving, going to the root, understanding, analyzing, why did that happen in the first place. And then that's one part, and then the second part is how Jeff Bezos accelerated the deployment of lean thinking by actually hiring a Marco Netto, lean expert, to become SVP worldwide operations and customer service. So that's really one, I think, important thing to understand, is that lean thinking shares the same purpose as Agile, but it's also decades of wisdom and learnings on how to apply it at the scale of a company like Toyota. And it's therefore a key resource to study when you want to do something that feels agile, but at very large scale. Now, when I show this slide, people in the lean thing in the lean community will say, I've always told the agile community that we're like them, but better. That's not my point. I think there's one other key element that we've identified in in large agile organizations in the tech industry. And that's really how it's really how technology has played a crucial role in enabling teams to stay empowered while scaling the organization, and basically by scaling the organization in the way that I would call a network of teams. So two really iconic examples around that we studied. One is Linux. So it's very interesting because Linux is undoubtedly agile in the sense that because it's an open source project where people contribute, most of the people contribute on a voluntary basis. If you start adding too many layers of bureaucracy, people will just stop contributing. So the question is really, how can you keep it, the bureaucracy as small as possible? And when studying Linux, you realize that the project had about 2 scaling crises. And one of them was addressed by re-architecturing the code to make it more modular, and then making it official that you had like owners of modules, so called maintainers. And then there was a second scaling crisis where people started to advocate really for, okay, Linus, you need a deputy, somebody who, helps you in your tasks. And so everything is public, so it's super fascinating to look at. And you can see how Linus answers and says, we're not addressing the root cause of this issue. And one thing he says is, if we want to make these things scale out more, it's not by making it more of a star topology around me and trying to, add people below me, but it's really by making it more of a network. And that's when he kind of decides to look at a technology called BitKeeper, and which is basically a code versioning control system that was designed for distributed collaboration. And he starts looking into it and adopts it, and it completely solves the scaling issues of the Linux community at the time. Now, if you've never heard of BitKeeper, the reason is that the founder of BitKeeper at some point threatened to make it not free for the Linux community. And it started created a lot of heated debates. And so Linus decided that, he couldn't be bothered and took a few weeks off to create his own version of BitKeeper called Git that, now everybody uses in the software industry. So I don't know what the moral of the story is here. Probably don't piss off Linux. That's a good one. Anyway, the second, a really interesting example around, this kind of how do you use technology to help scale is Amazon. So it's a story that's been long known as the API mandate. There's actually a whole chapter dedicated to it in the book Working Backwards by Colin Bryant, and I forgot the name of the second author. And it's very, very interesting because Amazon was like most tech companies, just a big monolith of code. They had amazing issues around dependencies, which they solved. There were 2 key processes they were using. One was the monthly database meeting. So if you needed to, make a change in the database structure, you basically needed to send it to the database committee that would meet once a month. And if your request had not been done the right way, then you would probably need to wait another 1 or 2 months. They also had what they called the Transverse Project Prioritization Committee. I don't remember the name. But the idea was that, every time you had the need for a project that would span over multiple teams, there would be a quarterly big process where you would say, okay, I need transverse resources to help me succeed. Very, very bureaucratic. You have to write down, estimate stuff, etc., make a business case for all that. And then the outcome was often horrible because you would often, you would need this transverse project to succeed on your business KPI. And then the answer of the committee would be, sorry guys, we didn't choose your project. We didn't find it a priority enough. So, okay, so not a good news if it's needed for your objective. But then on top of that, they would often say, oh, but another project got chosen and they need your help. So you need to staff, yourselves, have time on that project that of course, doesn't move any needles in your own like little silo. So that was a horrible process. A lot of talent left at that moment, and I think that the very smart intuition from Jeff Bezos at this time was to say, okay, we don't need more communication in. We already have all the systems we can imagine. What we need now is to eliminate communication, and that's basically when this started, this big transformation, where they decide to re-architecture Amazon into a service-oriented architecture, with one team per service, and also invest heavily in the quality of the APIs. So make sure that the dependencies between the teams became high quality APIs, so you would not need to communicate with the team to actually access their resources, because there would be good intuitive interface that you could understand, and there would be self-discovery, so you could find what you needed. So that's been a profound structural change in Amazon, and credited by all the leadership at the time as key in helping them scale further. And of course, the anecdote is, once you have this culture of creating APIs for everything, then you can start saying, okay, can I have an API to get a new server? And that's how you end up with an organization that can actually come up with Amazon Web Services, which is infrastructure as an API, and which is really what created the cloud, a huge industry. And I think 75% of the operating profit of Amazon nowadays. So yes, so that's really the two key learnings. One, lean thinking in the tech organization we studied, and this ability to leverage technology for more distributed organizations that act more as a network of teams. And and so after working on very large projects, multiple very large projects, and scaling our own company from 10 to 700 people, and being coached along that journey by some of the best lean experts in the world, probably. They're great. We realized we had a lot of learnings and wanted to share them, and didn't realize that writing a book was so hard. So we started writing a book. And basically the summary of that book would be what we call the Lean Tech Manifesto, which was this idea to build on top of the Agile Manifesto and say, okay, if these principles are not relevant with a large organization, but if the document does capture exactly what we want with Agile, could we actually rewrite these principles slightly to keep the spirit, but make them more applicable to a large organization? And so one learning was probably after 12 years of lean thinking, one thing that pops out when you look at the Agile Manifesto is that customer should be the first thing. Like it's really necessary at large scale to keep leading with value and value for the customer in mind. So the first change was to reorder the Agile Manifesto and put customer first. And then the second change was, of course, for each one of these to come up with something that was better inspired by lean thinking and how tech can enable more distributed organization. So that's the results. 4 principles: value for the customer, tech-enabled network of teams, right first time and just in time, and building a learning organization. And I'm going to try to introduce you to them really quickly, one by one. So first one, value for the customer. Let me move camera here. So as mentioned, customer collaboration doesn't scale, but what you can do at scale is actually define value for the customer as the North Star of your organization. So it allows you to agree on the shared goal of delivering more value to the customers as a whole organization, and make sure people keep focusing on that rather than starting to focus on their own silos. And then constantly strive to better understand what it means, value for the customer, because at large scale, it's not an easy concept. And of course, see how, as a team within the organization, you're contributing to the bigger picture. So that's so value for the customer, by the way, is the first principle of the book Lean Thinking by Jim Womack and Dan Jones. So concretely speaking at Theodo, what would that mean? So a lot of Gemba. One very big thing in lean thinking is you try to be on the ground. So and when I say on the ground, I mean, of course, the leadership team, you need the leadership team to confront their theoretical understanding of value with the reality on the ground. And that means going on the ground very often. Short anecdote. Yeah, I have a bit of time left. When I was in Japan, like for a study tour, visiting factories, in one of the providers of Toyota, I asked the leader of the factory, the managing director, how often he was going on the Gemba per week. And he looked at me really weirdly with a smile, as if I had asked a very dumb question and didn't know how to answer it. And then he made a bit of an effort. He said, I go on the Gemba 10 minutes every hour. So that's what it means to be lean, like 10 minutes every hour as, the owner of a 150 people factory. So one other thing we do is a tool we've created, we call it the product architecture. And the idea is to really make it visual. What are, the tensions between all the functional choices, all the technical choices you can make on a product, so that the team can be empowered on the value trade-offs. Third thing, leverage vision management. So I'm actually cheating because this is an obeya. It's a Japanese word for big room, and so that's a thing you will see often in a lean company. So trying to share in a visual way your understanding of the value, your understanding of the current challenges, and who's doing what, or who's experimenting what to address them. This is the obeya of a company in France called Theodo, who sell second-hand cars. So next principle, it's quite dense. Individuals and interaction does not scale, but as I've mentioned, if you use technology the right way, you can actually scale your organization as a network of teams, and that means you can reduce direct dependencies to help teams stay autonomous as much as possible while contributing to the bigger picture. Concretely speaking, there's a lot of work around designing modular and loosely coupled architectures. So you're able to assign teams to modules and give them ownership of their modules. It's a lot of hard work, I would say. If the piece of software you're working on is not modular to start with, there's a huge upfront investment. In the Amazon example, they talk about, I think, 12 to 18 months of upfront investment. In my stationary example, fairly similar, 18 months before we actually get to a place where we can deliver new products every 2 months. And then it's a constant work because you're basically fighting entropy. Second thing, it's good to have a modular architecture. It's really important to have super good interfaces between the modules. I think the keyword today for that is calling them API products or data products. So basically bringing product management mindset to the design of interfaces. And that, of course, will then allow other teams to do self-discovery, self-service, and have a lot more autonomy in interacting with the rest of the organization. Finally, this principle is not just about tech teams. And so one way to make it very applicable to any team is a self-service data platform, so that anyone in the organization, marketing, sales, whatever, if at some point they want to have access to some data, they can just access it. So the screenshot is the screenshot from our Looker platform. So we use Looker as a data viz tool and BigQuery as a data warehouse behind it. All right. I think I wanted to say something else. I forgot. Never mind. So working software doesn't really tell you how to address the complexity of quality and delivery at scale. But right first time and just in time, the two pillars of the Toyota production system is really like decades of experience of how to apply, address that exact issue at very large scale, to produce higher quality and delivering more continuously. And that what we found out is that actually once you start digging into right first time and just in time as a body of knowledge, there's so many things you can actually apply to the world of software. 3 examples. The idea of Jidoka, so trying to detect defects as early as possible and really like stopping at as soon as you detect. That is a key principles to bring in a software environment. The screenshot I'm showing here is a linter. So the idea that as the teams practice problem solving all the time, they learn new ways to prevent defects, which they can embed typically in a linter. So something embedded in your development environment that will statically analyze the code and identify issues. Just one example, if anyone does CSS here, at some point we realized that we had like interface issues that were often correlated to the use of exclamation marks in CSS. I could explain why. But basically a linter was applied that said, you're not allowed exclamation marks anymore, because if you're using an exclamation mark in your CSS, then you probably need some training on how to use correct CSS and avoid bugs in the future. It's just a very easy example, but to illustrate the point. Dantotsu, so I mentioned problem solving, the need to like systematically analyze defects, to learn how to learn from every defect, and also over the time start identifying patterns to address the root causes. And then third one, adopt a real kanban to visualize the bottlenecks in the flow. I say real because the word kanban is used a lot in our digital industry. But if you go back to the Toyota kanban, the goal is really to identify lead time and inventory and bad allocation between resources. So that means that it's not just about having a few columns and a workflow. It's really about showing lead time. So your increments of work need to have the lead time on it. It's quite brutal. Often you realize things have been rotting for 182 days, and people don't like seeing that, but that's the whole point. Really identifying inventory, so creating the weighting columns to see where things are weighting way more than they should. And also focusing at the column level on teams to see which teams are overburdened. So, the different steps within a team, not that interesting. That's their to-do list. They can keep it to themselves. What is interesting at the organization level is which team is overburdened, which team has too much time. Finally, responding to change doesn't scale, but what you have in lean thinking is actually lean thinking. I often define it as how to embed a learning system within your production system. So you have all these tools and principles on how you can make sure that your organization doesn't just react to changes, but learns deeply from these changes by listening to the customers and being empathic, and then build learnings. And build learnings, look for existing learnings, looking for past learnings, and then, of course, once you have created all these learnings and collected all these learnings, make sure you spread those learnings throughout your organization, so that you not only identify the changes, but really learn as a whole organization and adapt to it. 3 examples still. I think the learning organization, probably the key word is problem-solving culture, to detect changes in the market that require learning. So really make it very easy in your organization to talk about problems and analyze them. Not easier said than done. I have a culture of documenting learnings, so writing standards and keeping them fresh with Kaizen sessions. And then one way to spread those learnings across the organization is be like skills matrix, which allows you to visualize at the team level. What first it makes you think about what are the skills I need in my team, and then of course it helps you visualize what skills are underrepresented, and plan, little trainings on the job accordingly. That's it. I've tried to be synthetic, but there's a lot of learnings in 12 years. We've captured them in the book, so I hope you will enjoy reading the book as much as we enjoyed the incredible learning adventure that led to it. And that's it. I'm done with sharing that presentation.
Fabrice, it was awesome. I wondered, there are 2 questions in the parking lot. Do you have 5 minutes to address those? The first one is, what is your opinion on FAST? So the framework Britain Cartel created.
I must apologize because I don't know it. I think my generic answer would be, I see so many great initiatives popping up, I'd say, against SAFe, or trying to leverage the fact that SAFe is starting to I don't know, lose momentum. And I think it's great, and I think it's important to ideally, as a community, if we could all collaborate on that, it would be great, because I think one of the amazing things of SAFe is that it's a clearly identified leader in the space. And I think what the Agile Manifesto has done incredibly well is again help all the people with good initiatives collaborate. And I guess probably we need something similar, like a lot of these initiatives to collaborate, identify the common patterns, and therefore offer a strong and credible alternative to all these leaders of tech organizations that are being asked, why don't you practice SAFe, and don't know exactly what to answer to that.
FAST has an interesting take because it's built around the open space concept. So it's the idea that teams find themselves, so there are no static teams, just interested individuals who like to work on solving a certain problem. And then you basically have to pitch problems worth solving for every iteration. I find it interesting. I'm not sure how it might scale in a larger organization, but scaling is always an issue, right?
That sounds to be part of I'd say the larger movement of liberated organizations and teal organizations. One thing I can say, and I'm quite blunt. So first, I loved Reinventing Organizations as a book, and I love the principles there. I think it's important. I found that in the committee, sometimes people were forgetting customers. I found that sometimes these movements are too focused on the well-being of employees and not enough on the value created and delivered to the customers. And unfortunately, for an organization to survive, it needs to first service its. And so that would be my take on that. And I think that's probably one thing that we as an Agile community need to address, is the more we talk about customers, I think the more we talk about what pays the salaries at the end of the day, and the more it helps us.
It's interesting how many of the basics are simply forgotten or ignored. It's always puzzling me. You're so focused on your beanbags and your stickies at the wall that you actually lose track of what is important, solving your customers' problems. Last question. How can Scrum Masters and Agilists add a pinch of lean to help evolve their current practices towards an effective and humanistic scale? I don't know that word, but maybe someone else does. Where should we start? Humanistic. Yes, it's humanistic.
So very interesting, by the way. And again, I'm being quite blunt, but when we started Scrum, it was very easy to add lean thinking to it. Typically, you have a Bernhard chart. Every day, if you're not on time, that's a problem-solving opportunity. And it's very cultural, because of course people say, "Come on, I can't be on time every day." And then you say, "Yeah, but never mind. That's amazing. That's a good news. We can. That means we will regularly have opportunities to take some time to problem solve and learn something." So yes, if you basically see Scrum as an opportunity to identify problems, and then every time you see a problem, enjoy the idea of analyzing the problem and problem solving it. Then I think that's the greatest way probably to introduce lean and add a pinch of lean to agile. And of course, one thing is you need to think all the time about problems linked to value for the customer. Typically, I'm giving you my stupid example, but you're 1 day late on your burnout chart. It's a problem in terms of you're potentially disappointing your customer, for example. So yeah, really think about that. Or there was a defect in production. I love that, of course. Defects in production. I'm not saying I love defect, but are amazing learning opportunities in terms of understanding kind of misconceptions you have, and also as an organization, and has led to that potentially happening. So that would be my key takeaway. And one other thing which is great is so Kaizen sessions. So we use the word Kaizen to say time dedicated to take a step back out of your day-to-day job and looking at improving things. So again, think about value for customers. That can be a great opportunity to look at performance issues. You can say, okay, let's take some time out, 1 hour, half a day, 1 day, to really study the time it takes to show a page or open the app, and try to understand why, cut down in small pieces. Where is the bottleneck? What could we change to make it faster, and learn a lot about what is happening.
There's a third question that came up, and I think it's very fitting for the current time. Have you compared your Lean Tech Manifesto with the principles of the product operating model of Marty Cagan?
Yeah. So Marty, I love inspired, empowered, and we mention a lot of the ideas in the Lean Tech Manifesto. So I would say that all the good things. No, but there's this weird thing that all the good things that I see in our tech industry, you can really see links with lean thinking, and because there's no surprise when a large organization has invested so much thinking into how to address issues of complexity at scale. There's a lot of ideas that will be reused later and adapted to the software industry. No, but to be really concrete, I love the 4-risk model of Marty Cagan. Of course, a lot of the ideas of Marty Cagan are around, trying to create an organization that is aligned to the client, so that, again, teams or at least departments are better empowered on creating value for the customer. And of course, there's a lot of intelligence in the product community around understanding what value means. So these are all like very interesting things. But I would say the key takeaways for me, they were added to the Lean Tech Manifesto, and mostly in the first part, which is value to the customer.
Fabrice, that was awesome. Thank you so much for spending your time this evening with us, and sharing your insights in how large organizations can become lean, and what are the common roots of Agile and Lean. I think we observed a lot of principles we probably already pursue, but now we have a better context of all of those. So thank you very much, and I do hope that you become interested in the book, and that you get your copy, and that you are able to actually apply a lot of the learnings